I'm going to begin where we're in the dental surgery in Rajneeshpuram, and Osho has already set the scene. This is going to be an unusual book, a book. But as he started talking, it developed. So the first few talks, he was using the situation in a certain way as well, as far as I could see. He was feeling his way to see what and how he could use that unique situation in this. So he was dictating. So the first book turned out to be Notes of a Madman, and inside that Notes of a Madman is a second book, which is Om Mani Padme Hum. Then suddenly he announced, I'm going to speak on one book for every day of my life, and each of those books has had an influence on me. An influence where I found truth was resonating through those pages. He said most books are useless. In fact, one of the comments he made, he said somebody like Madame Blavatsky, who wrote this enormous book, The Secret Doctrine, he said it's a mountainous book. He said nobody has ever read it except me. He said it's like digging up the whole Himalayas to find a dead rat. So he said,
Also about Beelzebub, he said the same thing. That it's only one.
So as he's talking about, as we started the first session, he starts talking about these various books, and I'm writing the notes. And then after about three books, he said, what number am I on, Devageet? And I said, next one is number 4. So I said, okay, number 5, and he starts talking. And I realized that I said the next one is number 4, but he started at number 5. So how can I rearrange that? So as he comes, we talk for another 3 books. He says, what number am I on now, Devageet? So, did it begin at number 5 or did it begin at the real number of number 4? So I said, well, that last book was number 8. So I said, okay, now number 8. So we got 2 number 8s, no number 7, and like the whole thing is completely out the window. And I'm in this no mind state.
And the number 4 was forgotten.
I'm in this no mind state. I can't, like I'm writing the notes and I can't hold these numbers together. So the next time we come in, I'm working out, how can I say that? I can just say, this is the book that we... So again, it goes on, the first 3 books, what number are we on, Devageet? And I say, well, this book that we're speaking about now is number 3. So I said, okay, number 3. I said, but already we've done number 3. So again, I'm completely lost. So when it comes a little bit later, he says, what are we on now? So we've got 2 number 3s, we've got no number 4, and I don't know where I am. And then in that moment, I say, well, we're on number 8 now. That was number 8, but I got 2 number 3s and no number 4. And this would happen every time. And then after like 4 or 5 sessions, he then said, how many books have we done, Devageet? I had no idea. And so I said, I have to go back and look at my notes to see, because I get confused. He said, Devageet, I'm the one who gets confused with numbers. I'm relying on you to keep the numbers together. So I went back, after the session, I went back. Another session, exactly the same, where I completely got the numbers mixed up. I went back, and he was about 54 years old. We'd already done 62 books. So I came back to him, sheepish and, mea culpa. So I say, we've done 62 books. So he said, So now we do 2 books for every year of my life. So we start again. It's exactly the same. Every single session, I could not hold them. Wherever I went with my numbers, he found a way to give me another number. The numbers were never consecutive. So again, after another 6 sessions, he said to me, how many books have we done now, Devageet? Again, I went back and counted. It was like something like 118. And then at that point, I come back and he said, well, I would say 3 books for every year of my of my life. This was going to be like an eternal process. And so we continued, and then somewhere, I think the last book, he was talking about, I think it was Alan Watts, and he was talking about one of the books of Alan Watts, and then he said, all good things must come to an end. And then the next day we began, he said, I'm now going to, the next series I talk about my golden childhood, and then the next one. But the thing about the books, that sequence with the books I have loved literally drove me mad, you know, and I could just write the notes. I knew I could try everything possible to keep the numbers there. There was no way. Just an example.
That's nice too. So now let's kind of recap and make kind of some kind of like, for example, there is anything that I didn't ask you that you would like to tell from you know, for prosperity or something that, like, for example, this is between us and we cut this off. With Ananda, we did some section that she wants to, that we're gonna only put it out when she's no more there. I don't know if this is your case.
I don't have any.
Or whatever. Like, and if you have any things that you want to say about anything that we didn't ask.
Oh, about anything.
Yeah.
So
regarding Osho, regarding your feeling, regarding, for example, you were from the beginning with the 21 story, and then now, I don't know, whatever
so
you want to say.
all of those things to me are nothing really there to do with around Osho. They're not to do with the direct contact. My direct contact with Osho is a developing process. It's a thing which at the time it appeared to be one thing, then later as I grew in understanding and awareness, it then appeared to be something else. And it's a continuing process. It's like what happened at the time, like when I'm in Rajneeshpuram and he's continuously telling me that I'm giggling and talking and I want him to stop speaking, like, it drove me mad. At first I just thought it was Osho saying things, you know, many times he would say things that I didn't understand and I'm just writing them down. And then it began to get me. One time he said, you're such a nice boy, Devageet. You know, you never get angry with me. I poke you, but you never get angry with me. And he began to move in that direction, and maybe the next day he said, you're such a nice boy, Devageet. You would make somebody a beautiful wife, a beautiful Jewish wife. And I'm thinking, now that touched something. And so I'm sitting there, as he left the dental surgery, I suddenly find myself absolutely in tears. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I feel criticized. I feel that somehow he's trying to tell me something. I don't know what he's trying to tell me. I had no idea how to understand what it was. And so I sat down there in the dental room. I was just crying. I just wrote this letter to him saying, I don't know why you say these things to me, because you tell me that I'm talking. I'm not talking, I'm just writing down. I'm doing something that is the most wonderful thing that ever happened to me. There's not one moment that I would like to change. I don't know why you say that I don't want you to speak. There's nothing more wonderful for me to hear you speaking, and to be in this situation. And I said, all I can think of, as I sit here crying in this dental room, is that there's something that is not apparent to me that is apparent to you, and I don't know what it is. And then the next day, all of this is in Glimpses of a Golden Childhood. The next day, he said, I just received this beautiful letter. Remember, he wasn't speaking, so I wrote it. And so the next day he said, I just received this beautiful letter from Devageet. And he said, one word in there showed me where he was, where Devageet is that word apparent. He said, I don't understand what's happening, but there must be something which is not apparent to me, which is in your words. And he said, I will continue to do what I'm doing, Devageet. He said, I will not stop. But he said, your words have shown me where you are. Something of that nature. You will get the exact words. And he said, I want you to put it in the book. So the letter went in the book and his answer went in the book. What I'm telling you now is just my memory 25 years later, or more. So, like when Osho was talking, as he hammered away, he may say things that were irrational. He did this on a few occasions to me, like in discourse in Pune. One time, just at the end when we were talking in Changtutsu Auditorium, there was a question by, it wasn't Anando, but it was about age. And then he was talking about age, and then the next day he started talking, he gave a question about getting old from Devageet. And I hadn't written that question. And then I remembered once in Rajneeshpuram, when we were in the dental room, he was hammering away at me, and Ashu was giggling like crazy because she liked it when Osho was poking me. And Osho, remember, he's just lying there with his eyes closed. He said, Ashu's giggling. What she doesn't know is that I'm talking to her, but I cannot talk directly to her because she cannot accept it. So I say what I need to say to her by using your name, Devageet. Now, I remembered that when it was in many years later, in Pune too, when he was talking about age. And so he's talking about getting old and people are gossiping about me. There were many questions like that, and none of them were written by me. But I knew he was saying something incredibly important because all of us sannyasins at that time were getting older. And getting older for the generation that we were losing our youth, we were beginning. Osho was giving us a view of how to use our higher consciousness to approach getting old. Then, inevitably, he started moving into sexuality. Now, as he started saying these things about getting older, he would then often, at the end of the discourse, give a joke about Sarjano, Milarepa, and Devageet, about sexuality. And they were all funny. Everybody thought they were enormously funny. What they didn't know is that in my life at that time, I was in a dreadful sexual situation with a girlfriend, Prachuria. And she was like 20 years younger than me. It was exactly what Osho was talking about. There was I getting older, and there was she telling me how all her other lovers were better than me in bed. And the more she would say things like that, I couldn't make love to her anymore. And that freaked me out completely. When I couldn't make love to her anymore, she said, well, if you can't make love to me anymore, I will find other lovers, which she did. And then the more, whenever I wanted to make love to her, she didn't want me to because she's satisfied with many other lovers. And on other occasions when she wanted me to make love, I couldn't make love to her. My penis would not rise to the occasion because I was in a war with her. That's the time when Osho's talking about my sexuality. So there was one joke in particular. Now, as Osho's telling these jokes, in those days, the camera, the video, would focus on the person he's talking about. So there was one joke where I felt crucified. He's telling this joke where Devageet went to Goa with a young girl, and when he came back, somebody was asking her, how was it? He's much older than you. She said, oh, it was wonderful. We made love nearly every night. Nearly on Monday, nearly on Tuesday, nearly on Thursday. And that's exactly what was happening in my life. Right? And the camera is in my face. And everybody's roaring with laughter. And I felt, and I've seen my face on the video after that, is a picture of absolute torture. You know, there's Osho, and I'm desperately trying to smile and laugh, and I feel dreadful. then after that, almost immediately after that, Osho dancing and dancing, and he's standing in front of me, dancing and dancing and dancing, and my whole heart flew out to him, because the part of me that was in dreadful torment from what he was saying was not this part. I mean, this part is nothing to do with that. But that's how he used to worked on me in different situations. That sexual situation, but the one that really, I got the feeling, what I told you yesterday about the, are you my disciple or are you my dentist? I had the feeling when he was so relentless with that one, you take it out now, I had a feeling that this is a make or break situation, meaning that, Devageet, you either break down or you break through, and you do it now. And I could feel he was pushing and pushing, and that's exactly what happened. He pushed me to the end of my professional responsibility. You know, this ego that was, this is me, this is my work, I'm an expert, I know what's going on. And he was saying, it's my body, I'm the master, I know what's going on. And there was this ego that's saying, but dentally you don't know anything. And he was saying, I take responsibility. And so in that moment where I lost it completely, what I'm saying, he said, are you my disciple or are you my dentist? How could he say that to me? My ego was saying, how could he say that to me? My whole life is Osho, and there's nothing except being with Osho. And he put it right on the nail. Are you with Osho as my dentist or as my disciple? It was a conundrum, a koan that my mind could not handle. I'm here in the dental room with Osho as a dentist. He's saying, you're not here as a dentist, you're here as my disciple. And if you're here as my disciple, you may have to do things which are not according to you as a dentist. That moment. Now, I didn't know what was happening. At the end of that session where I said no, I have never said no to him. It broke my heart to say no to him, but it didn't break my heart, it broke my ego. When I came back to Dr. Modi, I could feel inside, I was weeping. I knew I was right dentally, but as far as my disciple's heart, and then when...
You're feeling it right now?
Of course. When I brought Dr. Modi back, I knew exactly what was happening. I knew what Osho would do. It's as if it was an open book. I knew what would happen, and it exactly happened. And in that moment of knowing, the disciple was there and the dentist was finished. When Osho says, now you take out this tooth had nothing to do with anything, except this device. He was making it so clear to me. This is not to do with dentistry. This is to do with you, Devageet, as a disciple. Now take these 2 teeth out. And then to make sure, the next day he said, now you take these 2 teeth out. And to make sure, now you take these 2 teeth out. He was using his body as a device for my transformation. Now this is, for me, the essence of Osho in the dental chair. He worked in different people, on different people in different ways. Me, as his dentist, I was in a unique situation, unique in many ways. I was in Osho's head. You know, how many people can claim to be inside Osho's head? Being inside Osho's head, what that meant was I was totally being worked on by Osho. I was in his head, but he was working on me. Many times he said to me, Devageet, you think I'm on the dental chair? You were on the operating table. And again, I wouldn't quite know what that meant until after it took, I'm a slow learner. right? It took years until in the end when he's hammering away, are you my disciple or are you my dentist? That's when the whole thing opened up for me, and I realized the compassion of this man using his body as he did anything to bring higher consciousness to his disciples. Now, when he came and asked me this book later to write the book about Bhagwan, Messiah of Life, Loving Laughter, the first question was, to me, why did he choose Sheela to be his secretary? If he knew what she was, and I fully believed he knew what she was, why did he choose her? And if he didn't know what she was, what kind of master is he? And then as I allow my mind to give me these questions, I got the answer. He knew precisely what Sheela was. And he had given it in an answer in 1978 when somebody had said to him, every commune that I've lived in has fallen apart because of internal politics. How are you going to stop it? And he said, I will not stop it. He said, for me, even weeds are flowers. I will encourage those weeds until they are finished. Now that to me was an answer that meant everything to me about how he was working with Sheela. Sheela, yes, she had an ego, but he trusted his enlightenment and his higher consciousness to wipe away all her bullshit.
And this is with everybody, all the other disciples.
But in facing that question, giving me that book, I had to face these questions because everywhere people were falling away from sannyas after the American situation, and those questions were there. Why didn't Osho change her? If he knew that, why did he allow it to go on? Why did he choose her to be his secretary? Nobody was looking at it from the view of him as a master working on a disciple, even if his whole work went down the tubes. He was
even
working.
If he has to give up all his teeth.
Well, that was later, but what I'm saying now is even if he had to give up his whole vision of being in America, that's what was on the line with Sheela. And she didn't have the consciousness or the meditation to go there. But that didn't mean he wouldn't go there. He went there. He took himself to the edge of it, he put his life on the line. But Sheela doesn't know that. She's still telling her lies.
That's what he says many times, the two things are infinite, the compassion of the master and the stupidity of the disciple. So he's still doing it now.
Yes. And it's an ongoing device for me. I meet people and say, why did Osho do this? Why did Osho do that? There's no way to answer those questions unless you have a heart connection with Osho. Then you realize it's a master at work. And you've got no right or knowledge or consciousness to interfere with that work. You may not know what he's saying. One thing I also want to say, I forgot to tell you yesterday, in that first time in Rajneeshpuram, something amazing was happening. As he was talking, let's say it was the second session or the third session, I could see his hands. He's lying there, completely silent. I could see his hands. One is doing this, and the other one is doing this, making a mudra with his fingers. And as I'm writing the notes, I'm thinking, what's he doing? I've never seen him do that before. And then I recognized that when he was doing this with his right hand, my mind was active. Meaning I'm writing the notes, but if I looked in there, my mind was trying to interpret something or write it in a certain way. And then I thought, he can't be. And then I realized that when my mind was absolutely 100% with him, the fingers were open. And I thought, how can he know that my mind is busy? I tried it again and again. The next day I came in and I did it deliberately. I started doing some calculations in my head as I was writing the notes. His fingers immediately made a circle. The moment I stopped calculating, immediately his circle was released. And then I realized, well, he's doing it with his right hand. What's he doing with his left hand? Now, Ashu was on his left hand. So I said to Osho, maybe session number 4, I said, can you see what he's doing with his hand? She said, yeah. And I said, well, notice when we go in the next time, when his fingers are closed and when they're open, what's going on in your head? So then, as Osho and I spoke after the session, she said, whenever I'm thinking about my boyfriend, she was in love with Rupesh at the time, a tortuous relationship. I know that because we lived in the same room and she would be fucking Rupesh and I'm in the next bed 2 feet from her reading my book. So she was going through all kinds of stuff with her love relationship. And she said, whenever I'm thinking of Rupesh, his fingers are closed. And whenever I'm not thinking, his fingers are open. He was feeling my mind and her mind simultaneously. And I tested it again and again. And once I'd got it, he stopped doing that anymore.
Did you ever ask him?
No, never. There was never a situation of asking. It was never conversational. It was never social. He was the master. There was nothing that I could say. There was everything that I could receive, but there was nothing I could say to him. What? He never explained anything anyway. And one amusing story again, which is apropos to these books. At the end of the books, he said, there may be some points as you edit the books where you may want to question and make it clearer later. He said, you write down your questions and we'll have another session. That was that. So after the books sessions were finished, as I was doing this editing work and typing work, a question came. Magga Baba died in 3 different ways at 3 different times. And so I wrote this on a piece of paper, and then Osho arranged a dental session to clarify the Magga Baba death story. So this was so wonderful. He gave me a 4th version, which was completely different to the other 3 versions. So this to me is showing what I understood there. When Osho tells a story, it's not to do with numbers or time or dates. He's giving an eternal truth, which is encapsulated in his words, and it comes out as his vision. And that again was one of the wonderful things that came from these books. My time of working as a dentist with Osho can be divided into 3 absolutely different episodes. The first time in Pune 1, it was completely different from what happened in Rajneeshpuram. And what happened in Rajneeshpuram, in a certain way, continued in Pune 2, but Pune 2 was again completely different. And then afterwards, when he left his body, it's only then that some kind of refinement happened inside me. I began to understand the richness of what had happened in all that time. I didn't have it. I couldn't meditate. When I was with Osho and Osho was in his body, of course I meditated every day, but I didn't know what meditation was until he left his body. And it was only when he left his body, and I'm looking and looking and looking, and writing the books was so important to me because it separated my ideas from the reality of my awareness. I became aware of what awareness was. And that's when I discovered. I started to meditate in a way that allowed me to know the reality of myself other than my mind. I discovered a reality that can only be released when awareness becomes aware of being aware. In that situation of awareness, witnessing is happening. Now, in the times, he gave me such a rich treasure trove of experiences with him. But at the time, I was too unconscious. I could react to them. I could feel them in my heart. Many times I was in tears, but I couldn't get the essence of what he was trying to do to my consciousness. That only came later. As I start meditating and remembering, then out of this amazing time with him, my own meditation is revealing what was happening. That's why I can talk now in ways that I couldn't talk then. My heart is still absolutely in those moments. As I talk to you, the tears are there. But my understanding now is completely different. Many years have passed. I'm an old man. And in those years of when I was not an old man, I didn't have the maturity to see what the Master was doing.
Also, I mean, he planted the seed, and the seed, they're sprouting, become flowers or whatever, and its presence is always here.
Yes, yes.
There is no, like when you say, never talk to me about in the past, and I'm always in the present.
So I value this situation now because it's of such importance for people to understand how the Master works. It doesn't come through, he did this or he did that. He's always working in a context with somebody in a particular situation. And so even though we give our stories and we have our notes, the essential issue of what's happening is like a beam of light which is coming through the darkness, and it's to set whoever he is focusing on in that moment is to find a way for them to break through of their mental games and come into the reality of their real self.
And can be like 15 years later when you realize
it may be lives later.
Lifetime.
Yes. It may be, who knows? And I realized that when we were talking yesterday, I realized that my memory about when the nitrous oxide was not used and when it was used, I realized that how, in a certain way, dentistry was incredibly important to me before I met Osho. It taught me how to focus entirely on what I'm doing. Whatever else is going on, nothing disturbed me. I was completely and utterly focused. So that when I'm doing my dentistry, later in Pune, I'm doing many things can be happening around me. I am completely 100% totally focused. I'm in this oneness with Osho. Now, that oneness at that time was a concentration, if you like. My concentration that I'd learned in dentistry enabled me to be in a totality with my work with Osho. But still there was concentration. And what happened was that as I became more and more aware, my concentration opened into awareness. Concentration and awareness together open in the door into witnessing. In witnessing, it can look like concentration. It's got nothing to do with concentration. It's awareness, which is 100% focus in 360 degrees. It's like a complete awareness, but without any focus. And yet it's totally focused wherever it is. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it makes sense to me.
That has to make sense to you.
Yes, it makes sense to me. And I've learned ways, in the work that I do now, I've learned ways where I can bring people into a no-mind awareness in 3 or 4 minutes. It's just a simple way. I call it the 8 screens of awareness, by going into myself and looking and looking and looking and seeing how, what is the next screen? Who's looking? Whatever I'm saying, who's looking? Until you come to a place where there is only looking. And at that point, you've got looking, looking at looking. In that moment, and Osho has, at various times now I hear his discourses, and I can hear things now that I couldn't hear before. And occasionally I've heard him say, when consciousness becomes aware of being conscious, then that is witnessing. That's what I do when I meditate. Meditation has become the greatest adventure of my life.
The end. Maybe. Very nice. Wait a second. Let's wait 1 moment. Something maybe is there. I don't know. Like for me, I feel like this, like we say last night when Pico was also gone, that for me Osho is here.
Yes.
And he's present. And when you meet another person that Osho is here and is present, it's very nice.
Osho's in my tears. When my mind is not, he's in my heart. I don't know if I can convey.
You convey. Very nice. No, was nice. I don't know if I can convey. You know, like.
I never know what people receive.
But yeah, but people can only receive what they actually like. You can give a big bucket if somebody's like this, then all the bucket is on the floor, and if somebody's like that, I mean that's all the bucket. But
But see, this would be the greatest gift possible if I could only convey what Osho has delivered into my life.
Why you switch off? We're not finished. Let the camera go on. Yeah, but first of all, you are conveying it to yourself, which is already a good thing.
Yes, and that's my work. You see, when I'm working with people, what I'm doing is trying to find new ways to bring Osho into my life in a way that can be understood by other people. Their understanding is not anything to do with me, but the more I make it clear to myself, the more it becomes something I can convey.
But
whether they get it or not is not.
You convey more with your tears and with your bubbling heart, because the understanding, my understanding of understanding is also I go to Amrita one time also, whatever you understand is your understanding. And you can't give your understanding to anybody else because everybody has to, like you had your time where you dance and sing, and now these people want to dance and sing, or you see Osho photo or whatever. Everybody has a different time and different stage. But you can convey through your tears, you can convey through your heartbeat, you can, just by your presence, the people who can feel that, that's it already. But regarding try to get people to understand, it's really like...
No, and the two can go together. When my words carry my tears, then those words have a special meaning.
But when the tears are totally there, difficult that the words can come.
That's
difficult, not impossible, but difficult.
No, not impossible. That's what I do.
Yeah.
That's what my life is now.
It's beautiful. You remember Osho, he says many times in Buddha Hall, you are so fortunate to be here, you are so fortunate to be here.
Yes.
And I remember one night I said, okay, du parle, in Italy means, Then when the night he came with the stretcher, I really said, I'm so sorry. Like from somewhere came like that. I remember that moment.
The key
and
goes into the lock in that moment. You see, that statue has it.
Beautiful one, huh?
Yeah.
He says, I give it to Bhikkhu because for me this is like Bhikkhu.
You see, there's something in that. You've got many statues, but that one has exactly that with the master.
Yeah, total like...
You can only bring your totality to the master. It's full of impurities. All you can do is come with an open heart, knowing that all that stuff is being delivered to his feet, and he knows that too, and he can feel this, your totality. There are moments when he can work with you, when you are open enough to receive.
It was very strong when you said, when basically give up all these tests for getting through your conditioning.
Yes.
You give up everything. It must have been amazing when you got it.
Yes.
But you got it after though.
Yes.
It was also good when you say no, because the no was there and you got it out.
I was completely total in that. You see, he was so brilliant in that. He brought me to a situation where he brought me face to face with my love for him. And my love for him was like a protection for him. And he was saying, I don't need your protection.
And he doesn't need people to understand.
Right. But in that moment coming, my no was complete. I couldn't, afterwards, and I said, you're a wicked old man. How can you say this to me? I say, old man, he's about 4 years older than me. How can you say this? But in that totality, that was where it was completely. I didn't care what he would do. I would not harm his body. 24 hours later, I realized that what I thought was harm for his body was not harm for his body. He was better. When I did what he said, what I thought was wrong, when I did what he said, he immediately lost his pain. He knew more than I did about dentistry. Dentistry in his body. Afterwards, I was just so grateful for him. What that happened, I was no longer a dentist at that moment. I was his lover. I was his devotee.
It's took a long time.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
one moment.
But it happened.
That's a
who knows how long?
Gift.
Maybe, who knows how many
That's
lives.
why, the story. You remember the beautiful story of the perhaps?
Perhaps.
There was this beautiful story that there was this old man, he had a beautiful horse, and then he lost his horse, and the neighbor said, "Oh, I'm so sorry that you lost a horse," and the guy says, "Perhaps."
Oh, right, yes.
And then after a few days, the horse came back with many wild horses, and then the neighbor said, "Oh, you were right, it's actually a good fortune," and he says, "Perhaps." And then his son broke his legs on one of the wild horses, and the neighbor said, "Oh, you were right again,"
Perhaps.
And perhaps. And then the war came, and his son didn't go to the war, and it was on and on and on.
Because they didn't have a horse.
Yeah. So then basically, it's always like this. What we can see is not what the master sees from a completely different point, and there is always a perhaps.
You can know that. But until it's in your life,
you
don't know it.
No.
And then when you do know it, your heart opens to realize that he knew it from the beginning.
Yeah. But see, for me, it's like when you say you want to understand whatever you do, I don't know. But for me, it's like you got some fragrance, I got some fragrance, Pico got some fragrance. And all of us who has been very fortunate to be with him, we are like a drop of the ocean that tastes like salt. And the salt is a salt everywhere. And then when you meet people who have not, we become in that moment the taste of the ocean,
You become the catalyst.
Yeah, you become the catalyst. And in that moment, though, when these people are kind of drinking you or tasting you, you're tasting them, and it's kind of that's what I say. For me, when somebody connects with Osho and I'm present there, for me it's a great gift, because I know Osho's coming for them, but I'm here and I smell the presence.
Yes. When I'm out the way, they can receive.
And that's beautiful.
Yes.
And we are very fortunate. Enough.
This is Osho's latest dental room. He spent about 6 months planning this place. And he loved it. I mean, just being in here is like being inside a crystal. And he loved the idea of all of us being reflected all the time. He said it would drive him mad. Anyway, what I would do, we'd usually only have about 2 minutes notice. Right. So the very first thing I'd do, Nityama would be over there getting her stuff together. I would check the lights, make sure the arm is ready so that he comes in and he can sit. I'd do a quick up and downer on this. I check that it's in the right position. This is a program chair where the legs and the feet and everything are exactly in the right position. He first started talking in the dental chair in America, when we did the books, when I became his note taker, and we did these books, Glimpses of a Golden Childhood, Books I Have Loved, and Notes of a Madman, So that was an amazing experience in itself.
Yeah, I love them.
Because what happened there, the very first day I ever saw him in America, we sat in the dental chair, and he started talking, saying some things, and I made some notes. And at the end of the session, Vivek said, "What were you writing?" And I said, "Well, he said something, so I just made a note on this clinical card." And she said, "Well, I'd just like to check that with him, whether that's all right." And then within half an hour, we were all having a darshan in his room,
and he was telling us about the great disciple note-takers. And he said, Geet, you will be my note-taker. And it was amazing because he was in this great big room. It was raining like crazy outside. The tiles on the roof hadn't been completed. And in this great room there was just a chair and 3 buckets catching the water as it came pouring through the roof. And we were just sitting around him. And what he said was, you will take the notes, and in maybe 1 or 2 years we will have some books, and then you will publish them, and they will become very beautiful, and people will love them, because no Buddha has ever spoken from the dental chair before. Talking to just 3 or 4 people, he said it's totally different from when I talk to the world. So at the end of each session, I'd say, Osho, I'll bring the chair back now, and he'd give a little nod. And then I would come round to the side, and he'd sit up and very gently swing his legs around. Nirvana would give him his shoes, and he'd slide his feet in. He'd stand up, namaste, and then suddenly he was gone.